Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are talking about the new movie Ballerina, which, as you can see from the title, is within the John Wick universe. So, if you're not quite sure what this is or why it's here, I can't remember. I think it was John Wick 4, maybe 3. I think it was 4 though. There was a scene where John Wick, like, very passively went through like an auditorium and he saw this ballerina performing, and there was like some sort of subtle hint that she's actually part of the Continental. And so this is like that movie where we take that small little piece of a different one and expand on it quite a bit. So this movie is mainly focused on the ballerina. Her name is Eve. As you can see from both the trailer and the poster, we do have John Wick actually in the movie. Uh, I'm not gonna say quite yet all the stuff that he does, but I will say that he is in, I would say maybe 15 to 20% of the movie. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, something like that.
Because he's brought in for a specific part of it, but the majority of this film is focused on Eve and what's going on with Eve. Um, what did I think of it? I actually thought it was pretty good. I just like all the other movies within the John Wick universe, this is very much a you're here for the action, you're not really here for the story very much. So there isn't a whole lot that's, I would say, fresh and new or, um, you know, crazy twists and turns throughout the story. I think the majority of what you're here for is the action. And I will say there was some pretty cool things that happened within the movie. So I think overall I was pretty satisfied with this one. I think it's a worthy entry to the John Wick series. Um, and I like that it's basically going in the direction of its own thing. Yes, like I said, John Wick was in this movie, but that's actually one of my small complaints. I thought he was just gonna be like maybe in the movie for 5 minutes where she gets a small little one-on-one session of, just talking her through a little bit of what it's like to be a part of the Continental. But I think he overstays his welcome a little bit because I wanted this movie to 100% focus on Eve, and then bringing him in, I think was just, to be like, oh, John Wick's in the movie. Um, I don't know. It's a weird feeling because I feel like it could have been a little bit better even without him, but I'm sure lots of other people would disagree with me. What did you think?
I would say overall it was a pretty good film. I think it's above average, but there were definitely some things that I think could have been better. Talking about things that they did good first, the action sequences were really nice. I feel like the movie was high quality in terms of, how much effort they put into making things look realistic and the martial arts combat component. Um, I feel like the pacing was pretty good for the most part. There was a few times where I was like, oh, this is kind of dragging on a little bit. But then there were other times where we were like, boom, 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 just going really fast. Um, so I mean, it had some ebb and flows in terms of pacing. The two things that I think probably, or I'm gonna go with three things that probably bothered me the most, and a couple of them are really more minor, but just, I mean, these are the things that bothered me. One was Norman Reedus. You can see him in the poster. I actually really liked him in Walking Dead, but I feel like that's all he is he's kind of typecast as that character. I really wish they would have given him a haircut or new hairdo or something, because I feel like all he did was play himself and the same person he's always been known to be from Walking Dead. I feel like he wasn't really an original character, which made it really distracting because it's like, what are you doing in here? You don't really fit the crime lord vibe. You fit, you know, a survivalist for sure, but not really like the crime lord type movie vibe. So even though I like him, I kind of wish he wasn't in the film, or at least that he was playing somebody different other than the same Daryl Dixon he always is. Um, Two was the main baddie. I didn't feel like he had a whole lot of character. I feel like he kind of fell flat. And I wish that he would have had more. action sequences with him. I'm trying to be careful to not get too much into spoilers here and not be too descriptive with it. But I wish they would have done more with him. I wish he was either more evil or more hands-on or just more involved. I feel like he was kind of the face of the organization, but not really super involved in things.
Yeah, he was
And then
basically the chess player moving the pawns. He didn't
yes,
actually do any he didn't do much of anything himself.
yep, yeah, exactly. And then the last thing that kind of bothered me, and this is something I've been kind of mulling over since we saw the film, is Eve herself. I feel like it's really hard for me to depict because I've seen, I think, all of the John Wick movies.
Yep, we
I'm
do.
pretty sure I've seen them all. Um, and so like I know that a lot of it is just kind of him going and kicking butt and going through whatever, but I feel like he had so many connections that the characters played together a lot better than they did in this film. There's a couple characters that she has connections with, but I almost feel like there needs to be just a little bit more of her connecting with people or showing her emotion a little bit more or j I don't want it to be like soap opera-y, but at the same time, like I feel like there was just we're just a little too much on the hair of action for the sake of action instead of action for the sake of whatever her motive is.
I can agree and disagree. I feel like she was very much an on your own kind of person. Like she knows she's a part of this group, of course, but her drive for being a part of the group isn't necessarily to be a team player, it's to get revenge. So that's why I think I could let some of that slide a little bit more because I think she's in it for herself and not in it to, being friends with everybody.
I think I kind of figured it out as you were talking through that of what I think was missing. I think she needed more dialogue. I know that John Wick is a man of few words, but at the same time, he had some things that he would say from time to time of like, reactionary type things, even if he's just talking to himself. And I feel like she was maybe lacking a little bit of dialogue.
The one thing I would say, like, if I were to pick something that bothered me about her, is I felt like at times she almost was seeming like she was trying to sound like John Wick. Like the cadence of how, I mean, he's a very weird character, I will say. Um, and at times it kind of felt like she was trying to be him in certain ways. I don't know how to better describe that, but if you know how John Wick talks, where it's very, very little and very little emotion. I feel like she does that a lot in the movie. It's very uncommon for her to have like a casual conversation where she seems like just an ordinary person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, we can't go too far into spoilers, but the way that she got into the Continental and how isolated she was, I could see maybe having some of that social awkwardness amongst her and her peers.
I did like seeing all the different places we went. I mean, we saw some familiar places and we saw some places we hadn't seen before. And there was a good variety, I think, of new and different things.
Yeah, my favorite area they went to in particular is actually from the thumbnail of this video where they go to like this big dance club area, which I think is pretty classic for John Wick movies. Like if that's not there, it's not a John Wick movie. But just when we were watching it, I just felt like this is a John Wick movie. It's Pistol Whip, if you've played that game before. Um, the vibes were just there, and it really felt like, this is John Wick universe, of course. Okay, so moving into ratings, what would you give this movie out of 10?
I've been thinking about this a while, and it's hard because you got to remember what it is. Being like a super action movie, you're not really, as you said, you're not really here for the plot, but you got to have some sort of plot to go along. You know, it can't just be nonstop action the entire time with no rhyme or reason. Um, I feel like it's definitely above average. I think they put a lot of care and time into this film, but I already mentioned, the handful of things that kind of bothered me, and so I think I'm gonna average it out between an average 5 and what would be the best is 10, and so I'm gonna land at a 7, kind of right in the middle.
Gotcha. So for me, thinking about some of the movies we've seen recent, this is kind of what was going on in my head when we were watching this movie. It was like the first 20 to 25 minutes, I was thinking like, man, this movie has the potential to be like a 9 or a 10 right now, just because I'm vibing with it. I'm liking how they're setting up the character. Um, then when I think about some of the movies that we've seen, part of me realized like, I might have been a little too nice to a couple of the recent movies with my ratings because I think this movie is better than some of the ones we've seen recently. But I can very well see your point of view of the 7 out of 10. So I think I'm at a 7 out of 10 for this one. Maybe some of my previous ones should have been um, adjusted a little bit, but I think the movie is above average. I thought the action was good. The plot really wasn't anything new. Like I said, there really wasn't any sort of twists and turns, which they really could have had in the movie. It was your basic revenge story, and then John Wick is thrown in the mix of things, basically. And I will also agree, there was a couple of times where I felt like action scenes just to throw in action scenes. In particular, like this isn't a spoiler. In particular, there's a scene where Eve goes to meet with a gun dealer, and he's showing her all the different guns and stuff. And we had just gotten done with an action scene, and as he's like explaining all these different guns and everything, then boom, there's another action sequence because the bad guys found them at the gun supply. And so then it's like, oh, well, we can't even get through this scene because now we gotta wait, we gotta watch this. Um, Although I think it was this scene, maybe it was a one soon after. It had one of my favorite kills, so you know you kind of go back and forth on some of that stuff. So I think we're in agreement on this one being a solid 7 out of 10, above average, but could be a little bit better. There could have been some more elements thrown in here to make it a more sound film, I would say. Okay, so moving into the spoiler section. When I said it's your typical revenge movie, I really meant it. Basically, this movie is, when she's a kid, she sees her dad killed by a group of people, and she sees the marking that's on their arm, and so, the rest of the movie, she's wanting to get her revenge, to take out the people that were responsible for her dad's death. And that's basically the whole premise of the movie. And the way we build our way to, the climax of the film is one, we spend quite a bit of time uh, learning like how she became the fighter that she is and how she became so skillful. So like the ballerina side of things makes her more balanced and able to be, more improvising type stuff when fighting. We saw one of the things that I really liked, and I'm sure there's people that aren't going to like how political this statement might actually be in the film. But so there's a scene where she's learning how to fight, and she has to fight this guy, and she's trying to fight the guy like strength to strength, like muscle strength. And her like mentor in this sequence walks up to her and she's like, you're trying to fight him, like on his terms. You need to fight him on your terms. If you basically try to muscle this out, you're going to lose every single time. So you have to fight like a girl and take the advantages that you can. And so that's kind of what, teaches her to be like, you know what? I may not be able to beat him in the muscle, but I can beat him in skill, kind of a thing, or cheap shots. Like the teacher literally tells her, cheat. So, she kicks him in the groin, and that, that's not a good business there for men. So, um, doing things like that. So, was there a part of her learning sequence that you thought stuck out to you?
Um, I think more just tying the ballerina aspect to actual fighting because it makes you have the like acrobatic type skills, but they really nailed home on she would fall and she'd get hurt, and then the lady would go again, and then she'd fall and she'd get hurt and she'd go again. And it just made her keep getting up over and over and over. And it seemed really ruthless and almost like, what's the point in terms of like, if you're trying to be a ballerina, at some point you got to give your body a break. But knowing that this is from a crime family, and having to, every time you get hurt or you fall down, you have to get back up because otherwise you're dead. I feel like have drawing those connections really was an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, I mean that I like how it kind of shows us, why is she able to bounce right back up after getting rocked for a couple of times there? Like if she gets punched 3 times in a row and she falls to the ground, how does she pop back up? And, seeing that repetition and her being taught this stuff it gives substance there. One of the things I thought was interesting was one of her tests that she had to do was that she had to like put a gun together and then shoot the other person in the room. And the other person in the room was somebody from the Continental, but I guess she must have broken some rules or something because she walks in and she's like, "This is how it's gonna end. Like, I'm a test." And so she says to Eve, uh, you know, "I'm you in 10 years." So kind of saying like, this place is willing to throw you to the dogs once they're done with you, kind of a thing. And in this scene, Eve does show slight mercy because she puts the gun together and she even shows the other girl, like she pulls the trigger and, nothing happens, but we can hear the noise as if she would have killed this person. But the person doesn't stop, so she continues to put the gun together. She's about to shoot Eve, and then that's when Eve pops her. So we're seeing like little bits and pieces of her character development here where we notice, she is willing to be merciful, but if it's her life or theirs, she's going to stick up for her own. So yeah, we get a lot of this character development of how she becomes part of the Continental, and all the different training stuff that she gets.
I want to pause for just a quick sec 'cause you keep
Mhm.
mentioning the Continental. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the Continental is just the hotel, whereas the Ruska Roma is the actual crime family or crime organization that she's a part of.
Oh, if I was misspeaking about that, I'm glad you brought it up.
Because the Continental, when she goes to meet, what was his name?
Daryl's character.
Winston,
Oh,
when she goes to meet him later in the film, because he gave her the coin in the beginning to, if you need help later, come find me kind of a thing. And he mentions that they allow other crime organizations to stay at the Continental. So it's not just a safe haven for the Ruska Roma, it's for basically anybody, and it's kind of like a safe zone, if you will.
gotcha. That makes sense. So yeah, now that she's trained, she wants to, find where can she find the people that had the marking that she saw, and then how can she get to those people, and then how can she take them out, basically. So she tries to, I don't remember his name. I know he's Daryl, but
Norman
um,
Reedus, or in the movie, Daniel Pine.
so she's trying to go find Daniel Pine, and because he has the information of where they'd be. Is that what it was?
Uh, the exact location of this other crime family is unknown, but one of them is staying at a Continental right now, and it's him.
Yep, and he's staying there because there's a big bounty on his head, and if you stay there, they can't kill you, but if as soon as you leave, then you can die. Like they can come get you. We do get a pretty crazy action sequence here where she goes to meet Daniel, and she talks to him for a little bit, but there's like people all over the place waiting for him to leave his room so that they can take him out. Um, During this sequence, we do get another. I I wouldn't call her a main character. I think her name is
Is it
Lena.
Lena?
Lena. She's kind of a big character, quote unquote. She's like the one of the big people in the crime people that Eve is trying to take out. But what we learn later down the road is that she's actually Eve's sister, which I thought was kind of a I didn't really see the point of that. Like it didn't add anything for me. It just seemed kind of cliche, like a I am your father kind of moment from Star Wars because we see this like when we did the opening sequence and we saw Eve as a child and then her dad is trying to, defend her and he gets killed and all that stuff. We never see the other sister. We just see Eve. And so from my point of view, she's a single child until we get like 75% into the film and then they're like, she's your sister. And so I don't know. I thought that was kind of pointless.
I think the idea, and I totally agree with you, but I think the idea is that the dad, Lena, or I'm sorry, Eve's dad, or I guess it'd be Lena's dad too, betrayed the family somehow, got his wife killed, which is how he got to be part of the family because he's married in. I want to say when that happened, Lena was with the crime family, and the dad was trying to essentially seek asylum somewhere else with Eve and just trying to get out of Dodge. And that's why the two girls aren't together in that scene when the dad gets taken out. But it does seem kind of weird that there's no mention of like, where's my sister or anything like that. Or I miss my sister, or where's Lena? Like there's zero indication in the beginning that she has a sister at all.
Right.
Not
So
even a family picture.
yeah, it just kind of seems like something that was thrown in there just to add potentially some more family drama, but it really didn't add anything.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's much further down into the movie, kind of towards the end. But Eve, she does meet up with Daniel, like I said. They try to escape, big action sequence. Kind of, we're led to believe that he's like shot and killed, but he actually isn't. And the bad guys take his daughter. Eve gets knocked out. Like she's taken prisoner, and then she has to fight her way out. Action sequence, basically.
Yep.
Trying to think, because I know eventually she then,
This is
uh,
when she goes to the weapons dealer, I think, and then from there, I think from there, sh the weapons dealer tells her roughly where this family, this other crime organization is located, I think.
yeah, like in the mountains. I think he says something like that. And so then she goes to seek them out in the mountains, which is like this big snowy area. It kind of looks like Russia in a way. I don't know if it actually is, but it reminds me of Russia. So she heads out to this small town, and this crime group. It's pretty interesting because they're like in this isolated town, and everybody is in on it. So not just, the head dude of the crime and his minions. It's like every parent, every child, everybody there is
The
part of it.
barista.
Yeah. So like literally, if somebody that you don't know walks into town, everybody is on high alert. Everybody's trying to kill you. Um, so
This was
she,
one of my favorite things, just that initial interaction when she first got there and asked for a cup of coffee, and she gets served the coffee, but you can see a mom and daughter or mom and child off in the distance, try to get away, and then just all of a sudden the barista turns on her with a knife, and things just go crazy in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect because they look like ordinary town folk.
right. And you would think, because she's there and the entire town is gonna turn on her, like there's no way she can get out of this. So the way that she's able to is that the head honcho of the bad guys, let's see, what was his name? The Chancellor, he contacts Eve's group and is talking to the director. And they basically come to this conclusion where, like, if she's not dealt with by midnight, then there's going to be this all-out war between the two groups. And so the director sends in John Wick. They call him the Wolf when they send him in, and the whole town is like, nobody interfere. The wolf is here to hunt his prey. And so John Wick is there to eventually, try to take out, quote unquote, Eve. But during their little scuffle, they basically come to a agreement where he says to her, "Yo, if you don't take care of your business by midnight, I have to pop you," basically. And so they're in this agreement. He's just watching over her during this sequence.
I thought it
Uh,
was a nice coming to terms with like she'd been kicking butt the whole film and hadn't really been bested yet. And then he bested her like 3 times in a row where he easily could have killed her.
mhm. Yeah, she becomes more humbled by it.
Hmm.
But that's also kind of interesting too, because I feel like that's how we felt as people watching the film. Like, man, she's kicked. This is what I was talking about with this idea of, John Wick coming in and kind of overshadowing a little bit. And here, I felt that same thing. Like, man, she's been kicking butt this whole movie. John Wick comes in, kicks her butt, and he kind of takes the thunder here for a little bit. But as we see this scene play out, that's not really the point of what's going to happen here. Because John Wick, he's like doing this facade of what he's supposed to be doing. These bad guys are thinking that the wolf is going to take out his prey and everything's going to be fine. That the two groups are not going to have this war because he's here to do his job. Um, but between the two characters being John and Eve, there's that, like I said, that little understanding where if she does what she does by midnight, then so be it. But if she doesn't, then he's gonna kill her. So he's just basically watching over her this entire time as she's ripping through the town. And I do believe that probably one of the cooler things in the movie is um, the head honcho of the bad guy, the Chancellor, his like right hand man has a flamethrower, and so him and Eve are like shooting flamethrowers at each other, and then hers runs out, and so she grabs a hose, and so he's like shooting fire, she's shooting water, and it's kind of like this Dragon Ball Z moment where they're getting closer and closer together, and she must have a significant amount of water because she definitely bested him in this situation.
Well, it was like an actual fire hose.
Right. Yep. What'd you think of this scene?
I thought it was interesting, a new kind of take. I was waiting for him to run out of fire, and I guess that's kind of what happened because her hose eventually took him out.
Yeah. And then she eventually took him out, right?
I believe so, yeah. Either that or that was the scuffle where she almost got killed, but then John Wick sniped him.
Oh,
That
that's right.
that happened at some point.
That's right. So yeah, we have this big action sequence in the town. That's probably arguably the biggest one there. But eventually, Eve does meet up with the Chancellor, and I don't really know if I liked how this went down because he's doing like this monologue, and even I'm kind of like, okay, get on with it. I want to see what you're gonna do, to fight back. And it's just one of those situations where she's like, shut up, and pops him. Like, it was kind of anticlimactic in a way, but maybe they were trying to show her recklessness. I don't know. But it wasn't my favorite. And she did it like right before midnight, so John Wick wasn't supposed to kill her.
Yep, so he tells the director that it's done and she asks if Eve's dead and he goes, "No, he is." So,
She says, "Is she dead?" And he goes, "No, he is."
mhm.
Changing up that pronoun, John Wick.
Yeah, which wasn't really the deal, so I was kind of surprised she took that and was like, "Okay," but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I guess at least something happened by midnight.
Right. Yeah, because I don't think that whole group was taken out overnight. It makes me, well, so towards the end of the movie, this is basically the end. I think it's the director or maybe it's Winston. One of them is saying to her, your actions are gonna have consequences. Now they're gonna be hunting you, kind of a thing. Which
I
probably,
think John Wick had said that.
oh, maybe it was John. Okay. And that's probably what's gonna open up to some sequels is that they're hunting her because she didn't kill every single one, and they're definitely gonna want to get back at her. So
Well, and the director's still mad at her for disobeying orders and going after this crime boss when she was specifically told not to. So I think it was her who put the bounty on Eve's head, isn't it?
could be. Didn't John Wick do something like this too in some of the previous movies where he
I
went
don't remember
against?
exactly what he did, but I know at one point he had a bounty on him, yeah.
Yeah, I think he did have that happen at one point. But that's basically the movie in a nutshell.
Yep.
She does the like dance scene that I mentioned, with the bump and music and whatnot. That was a small little, I think, mission where she's proving herself.
Was her first contract.
Yeah, it wasn't super big to the story. It was just more of that building the character, seeing how she's evolving within the group.
Oh, that reminded me of another training sequence that I thought was really interesting was um essentially like a hostage removal type of situation where, it was training, so everybody was all on the same team, but she would have to take the girl behind her, like, have her follow her as she tries to take out all the different assassins in the room. And just over and over and over, there'd be someone behind a different corner she didn't happen to look at, or she missed somebody, and, the hostage would be gone. And um, I thought that was a really interesting type of training.
When I saw that, I thought to myself, like, man, basically what they just did here, because I've seen some behind the scenes footage where they show Keanu Reeves training for his John Wick movies, and that's basically what they did. They were like, okay, we're gonna put that in the film. And that's what she, because I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of her training to, you know, prepare for some of the other action sequences further in the movie. It's just that they happen to record these ones for the film. My favorite, I'll give you a second to think about yours, but my favorite kill that she did in the movie was, I'm pretty sure this was at the weapon supply because she finds this like belt of grenades and she wraps it around a guy's neck, pulls the pin, and then like slides on a table so that she's on one side of the table and he's on the other, and then he's just kind of pinned on that other side, and the grenade like blows his head off. That was my favorite one.
That was a pretty good one. I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite kill sequence, but the barista I think was maybe the most memorable one. I don't know why. She kind of took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting her to be a trained killer, and then, getting stuck in the walk-in freezer and making her way out. And oh, another one I suppose that was a pretty good one was Daniel Pine or Norman Reedus. He'd been stuck in his hotel room because he knew if he left that he would most likely be killed, and the gun that he had on the door so that if the door opened, it would fire. And so somebody knocked the door down and the gun triggered and, killed them, killed whoever was knocking the door down. That was a pretty good one too.
That reminded me of Saw because in Saw 2, they start in a room, and if you tried to open the door and get out, there was a gun on the other side through the peephole that would shoot through it. I was like, that's exactly what that is. All right. Well, that was our talk on or our movie review, I should say, of Ballerina. Again, this is within the John Wick universe. We both gave it a 7. And It's a good watch. If you're a fan of the John Wick series, I'd go watch it. I'd see it in theaters. You get that, surround sound experience. That's what you want for your action films. It wasn't in IMAX for us, so that was a little disappointing. We saw John Wick 4 in IMAX, and that was amazing. And I'm kind of disappointed that this wasn't in there, so. Oh well. But if you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drops a like if you liked the video and drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the Ballerina movie within the John Wick universe. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.